Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back from the Adhan for Maghrib in London and the neighbouring areas. Our Maghrib obviously hasn't started yet here in Bradford, and most likely I will have to pray it as soon as I come off air. But slowly as it shifts forward, then it'll make life a lot easier, inshallah. This is a longer session now because obviously before the break, we took only several minutes, to be honest, because Maghrib was due. So we have a much longer session now, alhamdulillah. So there's plenty of time for you to get your calls in. So let me give you that number again. It's 01274 214299. That's 01274 214299. So please do call in, get your calls in, get your questions answered. Whilst we're waiting for those calls to come in, let me share some details of an eventful week that we spent traveling to the Holy Land, the Blessed Land, and it is Holy Land. Baytul Maqdis means the Holy House, okay? And that area is considered as holy, as muqaddas, as pure, as purifying. And if you look back to the time of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam and beyond, you find that many of the Anbiya, sorry, I missed that. There we go. It took a while to move, didn't it? Many of the Anbiya that were sent to that part of the world, the Middle East, went or were around that area, yani around Philistine, Lebanon, Syria, that kind of part of the world, wherever they came. In fact, it was only the Prophet ﷺ who was in Mecca and Medina. All other Anbiya, those that came from Ishaq's lineage, were all in that part of the world. So let's look at, for example, Al-Quds. So Al-Quds, Baytul Maqdis, is the rectangle shape of the compound. It is the whole rectangle shape of the compound. And on that compound, in the center, you have the Golden Dome, okay? And in front of it, you have a black dome building. So you have a Golden Dome building, which is like an octagon. And you have, well, it's not like an octagon, it is an octagon. It always annoys me when students used to say it's like something. And I say, well, it actually is that, isn't it? And there's me starting it. And in front of that, there is a building, like a masjid, and rectangle with a black dome. Now, when it comes to Masjid al-Aqsa, then it is referring to the whole building, okay? The whole area. And the whole area does not have buildings. There are odd buildings, but there's only two large buildings. One is the Qubbatu Sakhra, which is the rock, okay? The dome of the rock, as it's referred to. And that's the Golden Dome with the octagon shape. And then right at the front of the compound, you have the rectangular shaped masjid, which has the black dome. So if that's called Qubbatu Sakhra, the Golden Dome and the octagon, what is that other building called? That other building is called Masjidu Qibli. Why is it called Masjidu Qibli? Because it's the masjid on the Qibla wall, because the Qibla is over there. So that's where it is a building. And that's where you tend to pray your salah. But Masjid al-Aqsa is the whole area, okay? Masjid al-Aqsa is the whole compound. Even though there are no buildings there, it is the whole compound, which has other little buildings on there. So you pray your salah in there, 500 to 1,000 times reward for each salah, and your sins forgiven. So it is a very blessed land. When you are facing Masjid al-Qibli, and behind you is the Golden Dome, then to the left, okay, which is on the eastern side, on the eastern corner, you'll see like a metal kind of structure. So when you go across there, there are stairs that lead down into the basement, because the masjid has a lot of underground area. And when I say a lot, it is huge. Okay, huge. There's loads of space down there. So when we went down there, this used to be when the Crusaders had control of Masjid al-Aqsa. They used to keep their horses there, and it was used as a stable. So when we went down there, it looks like it's going to be really small, but it opens up and it's massive. You know, so many ways you can go. So when we went there, we saw, and remember, most of the, because there's no absolute certainty, these are mainly speculation, okay? Because the only way we can be certain is if it's in the Quran or it's in the Hadith. If it's in the Quran or it's in the Hadith, then we're sure. But if it's come to us through other means, historical texts, whatever, then we cannot say absolutely, guaranteed that's what it is. So everything I'm telling you now, that's, it's of that speculative nature. Whenever it's guaranteed or certain, I will say so. So when you go to that corner, then there is a room on the eastern wall, and that is reported to be the room that Maryam alayhi salam used to stay in. Remember, reported. Who is Maryam alayhi salam? Well, there is a lady called Hannah, and she was from the family of Imran, and she became pregnant. And when she became pregnant, obviously after a long time, she said, "Oh Allah, I'm going to free this child in your service." Meaning this child is not going to work, this child is not going to get educated. From the time they can look after themselves, they're going to worship you every day. Now the lady expected to give birth to a boy, a male child. However, as we see from the Quran, she gave birth to a female child, Maryam alayhi salam. And women did not usually stay in masajids, especially i'tikaf, continuously. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted her, and she went and she stayed in the masjid, and she used to stay there. Who took responsibility for her because her father was not around? Her father had passed away. Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam took responsibility for her. So that shows Zakaria alayhi salam was there as well. And Zakaria alayhi salam would bring food for her. But whenever he used to get there, she would already have food. But not only that she would already have food, what was remarkable is she had winter fruits in summer and the summer fruits in winter. So he would say to her, like, who's bringing you this food? And not only who's bringing you this food, how is it that this food is out of date, if you know what I mean? It's out of season. You shouldn't have this food. So she used to respond that Allah gives me this food. Allah brings this food for me. So this gave an extra level of conviction to Zakaria alayhi salam. So the mihrab of Zakaria alayhi salam is there. And the Quran mentions he goes and he makes dua to Allah, that, "Oh Allah, grant me a child. Grant me a child that can carry on my work after." Anyway, we'll pick the story up from there. We've got a caller who's called in on 01274 214299. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear caller.
Wa alaikum assalam, Mufti Saab. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to hear your voice.
Jolly good. Everything okay?
Alhamdulillah, yes, spot on.
MashaAllah, mashallah. Firstly, I'd like you to make dua for a couple of young lads who passed away by a tragic accident a couple of days ago. They were traveling on a B road, coming, they finished their work at 12 o'clock at midnight, coming home, had a head-on crash on a B road, somebody hit them, overtaking. Their janazah is tonight, 9:15.
Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. Most definitely will do, sir. Most definitely will do.
Yeah, and as the point in message, as you're talking about Masjid al-Aqsa, what is the Bani of Israel? Why is there all the conflict going on there? What is the reasoning behind it?
Excellent. I will get to that question. Excellent. Barakallahu fiik. Take care. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so we're going to bring that up to the present day, and the present day, obviously, why is there all that conflict there? Why is it such a hot spot? And as I build this story up, you'll see why it's become a hot spot. So, Zakaria alayhi salam then built with some more conviction, made dua to Allah, and he, in his old age and his wife's old age, was blessed with a son, Yahya alayhi salam. And we know about Yahya alayhi salam. Anyway, let's get back to Maryam alayhi salam. So we know after some time, an angel visits her, Jibreel alayhi salam visits her, and says to her that I'm going to bestow a child upon you. And she obviously says, "Whoa, how's that going to happen? Because I'm not married and I've not committed zina." So he said, it's Allah's will, and whatever is Allah's will be. And he blows the soul of Isa alayhi salam into Maryam alayhi salam, and she gives birth to Isa alayhi salam. So now we have Isa alayhi salam, Jesus. There is, before Sayyidina Umar arrived, the Christians were dominant in Baytul Maqdis. And there is, which I always struggle to pronounce, the Church of Sepulchre, or Sepulchre, that is there in Baytul Maqdis now. So if you ever travel there, you can go there. Because I'm always interested in the history of religions, I wanted to go inside. So I was with a colleague, Mufti Zubair. So him and I went inside. And the Christian's belief is that the church is built around three key events that happened to Jesus. Now, obviously, this is where we Muslims differ with Christians. But let me give you the Christian narrative and then explain the Muslim narrative. So the Christian narrative is that there is a place there. So in what is now become the church, there is this was all like a hilltop. This was a very mountainous area, all this Jerusalem area. It's not flatlands, it's very mountainous. So that's why you have Safa, Marwa, which were little mountains. Here you've got mountains. Baitul Maqdis was actually on top of a mountain. The Qubbat al-Sakhra, the rock which is there, was the peak of the mountain. So anyway, so you have this little place where supposedly Isa alayhi salam was crucified. Again, the Christian narrative. And then you find this red stain on the side of the rock, lower down, and according to Christian tradition, that is the blood of Christ. Some 3-4 meters away is a rectangle platform on the ground. And you see many Christians, obviously particularly Catholics, rubbing their clothes or something on there, lying on here, crying on here. And this is, according to Christian tradition or Christian narrative, where the place where Isa alayhi salam, when he was removed from the cross, let me just use the word Jesus just to make it easier. When Jesus was removed from the cross, he was bathed there, his ghusl was done, and also his kafan was done, he was shrouded. And then he was taken from there and moved another 3-4 meters to the left, and he was placed inside a cave. So he went inside there as well. Now they've built something over it, and when you go inside this cave, there is another, like a flat kind of platform, and supposedly that's where Isa alayhi salam was placed. A rock, a huge boulder was placed on the mouth of the cave, and supposedly Isa alayhi salam was entombed in there. We know then from Christian tradition that he actually awakens, walks amongst the people, and this is how they deem his first resurrection, and that he will be brought again near the end of days. Okay, we say the resurrection hadn't occurred yet. Now let's go for Muslim tradition. The Muslim tradition say he wasn't crucified. Who was crucified? Well, there's different views. Either somebody was made to look like Isa alayhi salam and he was crucified, or the Roman soldiers didn't know any better and they just grabbed the first person they could grab and said, right, let's take him away, let's crucify him. Whatever it was, that was the end result, that Isa alayhi salam was not crucified. In fact, he was taken up to the 7 heavens and he will descend. So his descension, according to Muslim tradition, has not happened. His resurrection, for want of a better phrase, has not happened yet. He will come near the end of days. So you can see now that there's a sizable Christian community, there's a sizable Christian narrative, massive difference between Muslims and Christians about Isa alayhi salam. Huge difference, we know that. Christians consider him to be Son of God. Christians consider him to be have been crucified, that God sacrificed his only Son for the love of humans and things of that nature. And Islamic tradition goes completely opposite to that. You also will notice that if you've ever seen images on TV or things of that nature, you'll see that there's a wall in which, around which Jewish people are praying. And they're taking small pieces of paper and placing them in the wall. So we visited there because obviously being British citizens, being foreigners, we were allowed to visit the Wailing Wall. So we went right up to the Wailing Wall, as it's referred to. We had some conversations with the Jewish people that were there, that were worshipping, and had some discussions with them. Now that, according to the Jewish people, is part of King Solomon's temple. Okay, King Solomon's temple. That's what they believe is part of. The Muslim tradition is that it's not, and they have ample archaeological evidence to prove it is not. But unfortunately, that's falling on deaf ears. So that's where the point of contention comes up, because according to conventional Jewish tradition, the third temple is going to be built there. But anyway, we'll get back to that conversation shortly because we've had a caller who's called in on 01274 214299. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear caller.
Wa alaikum salam. My question is, can we do Ishale swap to non-Muslim?
Sorry, you just say again, but a little bit slower.
Can we do Ishale swap for the non-Muslim who are not Muslims? Can we recite Quran?
Oh, can we do Isale Thawab for a non-Muslim who passes away?
Yeah.
Okay. Jazakumullah khair for the question. Okay. So the question that we have is, can we do Isali Thawab for non-Muslims? In reality, a simple answer, no, we can't. Okay, because once a person has died as a non-Muslim, then we cannot pray janazah for them, we cannot make dua for them, because they've already died as a person who's denied Allah. Why can't we? Isn't that a little bit, merciless? Well, the reason being is that that person denied the existence of Allah. How can we ask Allah to give them Jannah when that person does not even believe in Allah? Can you see the problem? How can we ask Allah to reward them when that person denies Allah exists? So it's a problem. It becomes a theological problem. So no, we can't do that. We can't do Isali Thawab. We can maybe ask Allah for some kind of reduction in pain or reduction in punishment or things of that nature. But in reality, that's not something that I have seen in the tradition. We know, for example, that Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, never accepted Islam. But there's no record that I have come across in which he prayed for Abu Talib. But he did say, or words to that effect, that Abu Talib's punishment is such that he has hot embers in his shoes which make his brain boil. And the only reason it's only up to his ankles is because of the good things he did in the world. So if that's what's happening to him, yet he protected the Prophet ﷺ, then you can imagine, anybody else what their situation is going to be. Okay? So that's that. Jazakumullah khair, sister, for that question. So please do call, continue to call. They can be related to what I'm talking about, or it can be something completely different. I think this is probably in relation to what's going on in the media. Anyway, so the number to call, 01274 214299. That's 01274 214299. Okay, so let's return to my adventures. So where were we? So that's where the issue comes up. According to Jewish tradition, where the Qubbatu Sakhra is, that is where Ibrahim ﷺ slaughtered Ishaq ﷺ, or not slaughtered, but was tested in slaughtering Ishaq ﷺ. And they consider that to be the Holy of Holies. According to us, Ibrahim ﷺ was asked to sacrifice Ismail ﷺ. And it wasn't in that area. It was in a completely different area altogether. So, and then I mentioned to you, obviously, this third temple that needs to be built. And this is what the aim is. So that's why you're getting this huge conflict that's ongoing. But not only this huge conflict that's ongoing, obviously, if we look back to the 1920s, the British Mandate of Palestine, when parts of Palestine were used as a place that was now going to be dedicated solely for Jews. And then we saw in 1948, I think it was, after the Second World War, where the State of Israel was founded in Palestine. And then obviously it grew, and then we had 1967, where, there was the Israeli government took more of the Palestinian land. So you have a situation now where there is an area called Gaza, and there's an area called the West Bank, which are literally, open prisons in which you have these Palestinians living there. So there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of tension. So you can imagine that Palestinians aren't necessarily happy, and that's an understatement, in the situation they are in. And that's where we see these continuous fighting going on and clashes and things of that nature, which is obviously problematic. So yes, it is a tinderbox, and that's putting it mildly. When we were there, there wasn't too much hassle. We weren't hassled, we weren't provoked. We smiled at people, people smiled back. So I don't think there was any issues there whatsoever. Sometimes people give a very kind of a scary story about what's going on there. I didn't sense that, I didn't feel that, and I didn't hear anything from the 50, 60 people that I went with. So I think that can be exaggerated somewhat. You get on with your business. You can, as I said, we walked freely amongst the streets of Jerusalem. It's split into 4 quarters: the Muslim quarter, the Jewish quarter, the Armenian quarter. When we went through the Jewish quarter, There was no problems. There was no hassle. Even though we were 50 Muslim men walking through, and some of us were quite loud, there were no issues there whatsoever. So, it's not a problem. But, for the opportunity to see the Quran come alive in front of you, many of the graves of the Anbiya are around that area. So it cannot be said for certain that the places we went to is the actual grave of a Nabi. That's why they refer to as maqam. But we went to the maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, we went to the maqam of Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, Ishaq alayhi salatu wasalam, and the wife of Ishaq alayhi salatu wasalam, the wife of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, other Anbiya as well, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, because they all are resting. Their resting place is in that area somewhere. Where exactly is it? As I said to you, there's no evidence in the Quran or Hadith that will say it is in this place or it is in that place. However, there are maqams built there, and it is said this is the maqam of Ibrahim. It's speculatively that this is where Ibrahim al-Islam is laying. Nothing can be said for certain. But we managed to visit those places. Each one of those places has a masjid, so obviously we prayed there. And we met there. Obviously, we went to Baytul Laham. The English variant is Bethlehem, because there's different opinions as to where Isa al-Islam was born amongst the Christians. Some Christians say he was born in Bethlehem. Some say he was born in Nineveh. Some say he was born in Nazareth. So there's ikhtilaf amongst the Christians as to where Isa al-Islam was actually born. We don't have many reports with regards to where his birth is, but we know it's in this kind of area. And we know he was sent specifically to Bani Israel, the Jewish people, to inform them of their rectifying their behavior, and therefore he would have been around that area in order to carry out his dawah work. So as I said, it's a remarkable place. It's an absolute, gem of a place, alhamdulillah. You can feel the serenity there. And what you see is, obviously, when you go to Mecca and Medina has had to modernize because of the number of people that come to Mecca and the number of people that come to Medina. So it no longer has that kind of like historic touch. But when you go to Baytul Maqdis, then, the walls are ancient, literally. The walls, the buildings go back, 2,000, 1,000 years or something like that. 1,500 years. It goes back a long, long time. And when you're walking along there, there's one place, again, speculatively, where there's a handprint on the wall next to a church. And the view of the Christians is that this is the handprint of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, we can say it is or it isn't, but Christians have been living in Jerusalem since the time of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And, word is passed on from priest to new priest, new priest to new priest, and that carries on. So it might be, it might not be. There's also the understanding that there's one church, which was right near our hotel, in fact, is the starting point for Isa al-Islam, or according to us, some other person, where he had to carry the cross. Because one of the punishment is when people used to be crucified back in those days by the Romans, is they would carry their own cross to the place of crucifixion. That was like an added punishment, that you were literally taking the thing that was going to kill you on your own back. And obviously people threw stones at them, people threw cabbages at them. Probably one of the Roman guys would whip him, things like that. And he would carry this cross all the way to the place, obviously, according to Christian tradition, the church's sepulchre, and he would be obviously crucified at that place. Obviously, the church didn't exist then, the church was built afterwards. So yeah, as I said, it's a remarkable place, absolutely remarkable place. It's one which requires quite a long time. We only had, just under a week, so we rushed things. But I could easily stay just in Jerusalem alone for a couple of weeks, and aramse just go through every quarter, walking calmly, because the history is on the streets. The history is on the walls. It's honestly, it's a remarkable place. If you can, go. I would honestly strongly advise you to go. It's pretty easy when you go there. You don't necessarily need a guide. There is a book that's been written by a scholar that we met, and we may look at translating that. I know Maulana Ayub Sahib is going to do it in Urdu, and I may do it in English, and that would act as a guide. So if you're kind of well read and you got access to a decent material, you could go there yourself once you booked a hotel room, and go around yourself. And sometimes the adventure is not knowing exactly where you're going to go and just walking, as long as you know how to get back. You close your eyes and just wander around. But even then, even if you did that, it'd be easy within a few seconds, within a few questions you do, because you find the Israeli police are stationed everywhere throughout the old city of Jerusalem. And you said, I need to get to such and such hotel, they would say, go left, go right, and go ahead. So they'd show you the way. There's lots of people everywhere, and there's lots of shops everywhere. So even if you went into a shop and asked, they'd show you the way. So sometimes the adventure is just to go there and kind of absorb all these things. But a little bit of reading before you go is I would say, is vital. There's another place, for example, in the Al-Quds compound, which is a museum. And a lot of the pots which had the olive oil in it, other bits and pieces that were in Al-Quds, the wood that was used, is now kept at this museum. So you can see that. There's also a small section where, again, speculatively, the Prophet ﷺ tied his buraq, which was this flying animal, when he got onto it in Mecca and for the Laylatul Qadr, the Isra and Mi'raj, and it galloped or flew at the speed of light, because buraq is lightning, and that's literally how fast it went, speed of light, to get to Bayt al-Maqdis, and then he tied it to a ring in the wall. And so that is reportedly over there. It's, as I said, it's a place to go. It's a place you want to kind of, and the weather's nice, so it's not cold this time of the year. It's not too hot either. I think if we'd probably gone in the middle of summer, it would have been toasting. It was in its mid to top 30s, which is hot. But, if you avoid going out at noon time, obviously you go for Dhuhr. But after that, if you make your way back home quickly to the hotel, then you can relax and go later. But as I said, it is somewhere, that you really want to experience. Even if you go once, it's somewhere you want to experience and feel, and pray there and whatever. Yeah, you might get a little bit hassle at the airport when you land. Obviously, you're coming as a foreigner. We had a large group, but if there's nothing untoward that you've done or anything, then there's no hassle. As I said, a lot of scare stories are shared. Oh, this happens, that happens, whatever. I think that's just a lot of exaggeration, a lot of active imaginations. Really, you just get there and get on with it. It's about an hour's drive from the Tel Aviv airport to get to Jerusalem, so that's not much hassle either. It's about a 6-hour flight, 5.5-hour flight from the UK. We went from Manchester to get to Tel Aviv, so about 5.5 hours. So it's 6 hours and you could be there. Obviously, if you're going a large group, then you've got to wait for everybody to get through passport check and security before you can go. Whereas if you're going as a small family, then that's not the case. And getting coaches and getting taxis is pretty easy to get. The shekel, which is what you use over there, is about just short of 4 shekels to a pound. And it's good, good for money. But at the end of the day, when you go there, you want to support the economy of the Palestinian people there, because obviously they do struggle for obvious reasons. There are lots of restrictions on them. So, may Allah accept. Anyway, that brings us to the end of today's program. I hope that, the conversations that I had with you there about our little trip has been informative as well as beneficial for you, and maybe encouraging you or your family to also take that trip. We will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday, and Friday, inshallah, with our questions and answers. So please do tune in again. For now, all I can do is give you salam, and I look forward to seeing you all. Maybe have some questions about our trip so that it can benefit you more. Some queries, maybe even some practical tips. It doesn't have to be religiously based questions. Maybe some practical tips of how to go about doing it. But all that is for tomorrow now. We've done our piece for today. All I can say is thank you for calling in, the 2 that called in. We know there's a janazah taking place of those two young men. May Allah bless them, may Allah forgive them and increase their rank. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.